Hey guys, it's Dan. How's it going? This video, I mentioned in the last video, was coming, which is a unboxing of the Wargames Atlantic Foot Knights set that was just released just earlier this month, actually. And I was pleasantly surprised. I placed an order on eBay for one that was reasonably priced with free shipping, and it turned out that it shipped from Griffin's Lair Games out of Erie, Pennsylvania, which is, I'm in southeastern Pennsylvania and they're in western Pennsylvania, so it got here in like 2 days. So yeah, very pleased to have it show up at my door. I was impressed to get that email this morning. If you watch my previous unboxing video on the Wargames Atlantic Classic Fantasy Goblin box, this is a historical range of theirs. They've got several historical ranges. They each have a different title that kind of allude to weapons and fighting styles of whatever era that they're trying to depict. This is a brand new range, first set in this range, and if I read correctly, there's going to be 5 kits. There are the Foot Knights, which is the first box. There's going to be Mounted and Foot Sergeants, so 2 separate boxes, Sergeants with a J for being historically accurate. And those I imagine are going to be similarly styled to the Foot Knights. I would guess that it's going to be slightly different weapons, because those would have been non-knight kind of heavy infantry of the time. There's going to be a mounted foot knight, but a mounted knights box, and then there's going to be a levy box. So my suspicion is that you're going to see more ranged weapons. Like in the levy box, you'll probably see more spears in the Foot Sergeant box, but we shall see, because what we have today is the Foot Knights. So I talked a little bit about the box art on the last video, and I had mentioned one of the things I did not like so much about the land. In fact, let me just pull that by. I've got it right over here, so let me just allow you to juxtapose these two. So again, the classic fantasy goblins are up here at the top, and you can see what I feel is an improvement in style and art direction here for the new box. So they do this with all their ranges. They have a slightly different font and coloring down here at the bottom. The title is up here in the top right, just like it was for Classic Fantasy. I nitpick. I really think that this box art is fantastic. It's a step in the right direction. I like that they've photoshopped the models out. If you have to have pictures of models in the front, let them be well painted and let them be kind of isolated without background, so that you can clearly see what it is that's being depicted. I, as always, really like the artwork that they have, typically on the left-hand side there. And then if we flip over to the back here, you can see the same thing's been done here, where they've photoshopped the miniatures out. I can't take credit for that, because again, I leveled those criticisms 2 days ago, and these boxes obviously have been out since then. But yeah, like this is fine, but you really can't see what's going on. Whereas this here, you've got the miniatures clearly isolated, so you can get a much better idea of what the contents are. Even from a layout formatting standpoint, I like the information on what was happening historically over here on the left. And different for Wargames Atlantic is they've made a reference to Baron's War, which is a rule set that you could pick up and very easily use these models for. It leads, I think, to a little bit of confusion when the boxes are displayed on the like this. Imagine them on a shelf like this. That it's Wargames Atlantic. The title of the range is Age of Chivalry. If you're just looking at it from the left-hand side, it looks like the title is Baron's War, Age of Chivalry, as like a subtext kind of thing. So a lot of terms being bandied about, but overall, I think this is very successful. And as I mentioned, I think this is a good direction for them. I should mention right away, maybe you guys have already spotted this, so most of their kits are 30 models, 30 miniatures for 35 USD. But this one is 24. Now they have one other kit that has 24. I should say one other infantry kit, because cavalry is a totally different realm. But one other infantry kit that has 24 models, and that's their Conquistador set. And the Conquistadors were released simultaneously with the Aztecs, which is also a 30 model kit. But the Conquistadors had 2 sprues of just weapons. And I mean a ton of weapons. So you could equip them all kinds of crazy different ways. But this one, from glancing at the contents of the box, does not have an extra weapon sprue. So we'll take a look and see if that detracts from the box at all. And as we open it, actually I didn't even notice this when I was looking at it. Look at that, it's very nice. It says packed for me by Danny S. Thanks, Danny S. So open it up. And as I mentioned on the last kit, again, there's no bases. which you can kind of take that or leave that. For the price point, I think it's perfectly reasonable to source your own bases. There's great options online for MDF bases. You can 3D print them. But as I mentioned in the last unboxing, it means that all of us have to find our own bases because the little like tabs that the models stand on are not sufficient for gaming purposes. So yeah, 4 sprues this time, 6 models a piece, 4 sprues, all identical. There's no command sprue or anything like that. So let us take a look. I guess this is the front. Actually, that's weird because it's the front for some of the legs and torsos, but it's the back for the head. So I guess this is actually the front in terms of where to start. So first impressions, this is super clean, very minimal cleanup work that's going to be required. I don't know what they do in terms of injection molding compared to what some other companies do, but they could teach a thing or two to some other companies, I think, because they really do a good job when it comes to plastic injection molding. So you can, a couple things of note here that stand out to me anyway, having put together a lot of medieval kits and foot knight kits, actually, be it from Fireforge, Perry Miniatures, what have you, is that the torsos, which you can see down here, there's 6 torsos, again 6 models per sprue, are detached from the legs, which is neat actually, because it means that you can get a real variety of poses. You can have a torso maybe like looking off to the left slightly or to the right, whereas actually I have one right here. So I wish I'd had my Fireforge, because I think these are more directly comparable to Fireforge models, because the time period that we're depicting here is ostensibly 1150 to 1320, which I would armchair historian here, nerd alert, that I would disagree with that slightly. Yeah, 1320 you would have models with nothing but chainmail, but this is more like 1200s, maybe late 13th century, but this is more like circa 1250 what we see here, because there's no plate to speak of anywhere here. It's full chainmail. So this is, I think, great as like alternative sculpts for Bretonnium players, for example. You might have even spotted some of the helms look like the great helms you would see on sort of the fantasy take of that period with Bretonnian models. But they would therefore be more directly comparable to Fireforge foot knights. And again, I have some, I just can't find them anywhere. But what I have here is a Perry Miniatures Agincourt plastic foot knight model. And you can see there's a lot more plate involved here because this is about 100 years later. But in terms of scale, they're almost identical. You can see the legs there are pretty similar in pose. But again, as I mentioned, all the torsos, both for Fireforge and for Perry Miniatures, are attached to their foot knight models, whereas here you've got them detached, which allows for a lot of pose variety. Another criticism I had of the Goblin kit is the lack of weapon options, which you can see here, maybe you've already spotted, is not a problem with this kit. There's no option for like spears, for example. As I mentioned, I think we're probably going to see those in the Foot Sergeant and Levy kits, which would allow for some kit bashing if you want to equip your foot knights with spears, which certainly would have happened. But what I see in terms of hand weapons here, 1, 2, 3, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, yeah, 14 hand weapon options, a mix of axes, some swords, like a falchion, cutlass style. There's these weapons here that are like pickaxes, kind of cavalry picks, clubs. Actually, I miscounted 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There's 15 single hand weapon options. And then there's actually some double-handed options. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, call them great weapons, if you will, anything requiring 2 hands. And that's a mix between 2 axes and then 2 large swords, like hand-and-a-half style swords. This is the back of the sprue here. But that is fantastic. Excellent variety there. Gives you a lot of options. Sword scabbards down at the bottom here. And then there's a spear here, which I think is meant to be a standard. That works for either, right? It's kind of a short standard long spear, if you will. Heads are up here. Looks like almost all the heads. I wouldn't call this a head. It's a helmeted arm, perhaps for a champion or something like that. But let me flip this over. What am I doing here? Helmeted heads are up here. You can see there's a couple unhelmeted options, which are cool. Again, it's frustrating me only because like some of them are flipped one direction and some are the other way. So there you go, a couple of cool options for maybe a champion model, but then all of them are otherwise going in this direction, so we'll flip back. So those who have dealt with the Fireforge kits will recognize the styles of some of these helms. Again, you can see different sizes here, but you can maybe recognize some of them as also showing up in the Fireforge kit. Good variety. Again, just a chainmail coif on this guy. And lots of different options for you depending on what it is that you're trying to depict. And in fact, one thing I do like about these helmets is I think that they're scaled slightly better than Fireforge, because what I don't have are the foot knights, but I have built some of their mounted knights. Again, I think that if you look at this, this is depicting roughly the same time period. Call it mid to late 1200s as the Wargames Atlantic foot knights here. But look at the helm differences, even though, well, actually, let me back up just a little bit. You can see, like, in terms of the torso, it's pretty much the exact same size. The legs, obviously, he's mounted, but it's all roughly the same scale. But I always felt that the helmets on these were slightly too large. The lances are also slightly too large. That's why this lance is actually out of the Perry Miniatures Agincourt box. So I did a little bit of kit bashing there, but these helmets I think are better proportioned for the model. So I might actually, given that there's so many head options, I might swap some of them out. Because you can see it's pretty much the same style. It's just, I think, better proportioned for the body that it's sitting on. So a little bit of comparison for you there. A couple of shields options, 6 shields to 6 models. This one looks like it's a slightly older design. Then you got some heater shields. The size all looks pretty much correct to me. I don't think you need a whole lot of variety in terms of shield designs, mostly in how you paint them. You can see these ones are a little bit longer than these 3 that are over here. And then for torsos, they did something interesting that I haven't seen done in a Wargames Atlantic kit yet anyway, which is that you can see there's 2 normal torsos over here that you can customize with whatever arms you want, but 4 of them actually have sculpted left arms, which is good and bad. Bad, I realize, because there are 4 two-handed weapon options, and I don't know how those match up with the sculpted left arms here that all look like they're designed to go with shields. So that's a negative there, unless you're going to use all of these across the multiple sprues to make great weapon guys. But what that means is that even though there's 16 great weapon options in this kit, if I'm understanding correctly, I think that you can only use, you can only use 8, unless you do some, cutting over here. But I really won't know for sure until I start putting these models together, but at least glancing at it, I think that's the case. But the cool thing about this, and you see this on a couple of the models in the box art here, is that it leads to some really neat and convincing poses here, like this guy here that's holding a shield that's strapped in across his body and attached to the shield. When I first saw this, I was wondering how on earth they did that, because that's pretty complicated to do when you have like a separate arm piece. But of course, here it is here. That's the torso that's being depicted on the front cover there. That's how they did it, is that it's actually all sculpted in on the left arm there. So makes it easier for putting the models together, certainly. It will limit things a little bit when it comes to customizing. But overall, I think that's a neat direction. And also, in terms of weapon or arms over here, this is curious to me, that you can see there's a lot of left arms here that aren't attached to anything. I wonder if, oh, that's what it is. It goes to these gray weapon arms here. I was wondering if they were like teeing up conversion work potentially. But yeah, these 4 all go to the gray weapon arms that are over here. Yeah, here, and then here. Yeah, so overall, I think this is excellent work. Again, a couple small quirks, no bases if that bothers you. The sculpted left arms here, I actually quite like aesthetically. I think that turned out very, very well, but I could see how that might be frustrating. For example, if you're looking to build 16 great weapon armed guys, you actually have to get multiple bodies, or you have to do some cutting work here in order to achieve that. But I think there's a lot of weapon variety, crazy amount of weapon variety actually for a Wargames Atlantic kit, and a lot of head options that I believe will kit bash extremely well with Fireforge kits, Perry Miniatures kits, and critically, the other Wargames Atlantic kits that will be coming out. So yeah, another successful box from them, I think. So Age of Chivalry, Wargames Atlantic Foot Knights. I recommend them if, again, if you're looking to get into historical gaming, or I use these for fantasy gaming, so you could certainly use these for Bretonnians, what have you. So nothing else in the mail right now, but as soon as I get another box of something, I'll throw up another unboxing video for you guys. But in the meantime, appreciate you hanging out with me, and happy gaming.